some of the teams were going to run depleted uranium because it was so dense.
Get the fuck out of here.
And they had to write a rule a rule prohibiting it, or those idiots were going to say, this is better CG. We're going to do this.
Oh my God! Do you hear Jackie Stewart somewhere going, this is very unsafe?
Yes.
The Defense Department is somewhere going, we're picking up a satellite reading over Daytona.
So it's racing. Pick your poison. Is it faster? I'll do it.
That is so racing.
Depleted uranium?
I know a guy at the Pentagon. He's going to get us some extra depleted uranium.
What year was that? Like, what generation?
This
are we
is in the
talking
90s, I think. This is when the fuel was, really nasty stuff that just breathing it was not good for you.
What up, everybody? Welcome to the Smoking Tire Podcast. Today's episode is brought to you in part by HelloFresh. You know what HelloFresh is? It's the service that brings farm-fresh, pre-portioned ingredients and seasonal recipes right to your doorstep. You can skip trips to the grocery store and count on HelloFresh to make home cooking easy, fun, and affordable. And that's why it's America's #1 meal kit. I love HelloFresh because I love to cook, right? I do. I love cooking, and I'm not looking for something that replaces cooking. I'm not looking to have complete meals delivered to me and basically reheat them, and then I feel like I'm eating leftovers or something. It's never that great. With HelloFresh, I still do the cooking. It's just that the sucky parts of the cooking are eliminated. Trying to spend time figuring out exactly what to make that's not just a repeated thing I make every week. Going to the store, wasting time, digging through produce. HelloFresh handles all of that. The recipes are really easy. The recipe cards they send you are clearly printed. You can read them from a couple feet away. They got big fonts. They got nice pictures. They're the kind of thing that once you make the recipe, you keep it around. That way, if you ever want to make the recipe again in bigger quantities for a party or something, it's great. The produce and the meats are always fresh, right? And the way they package them and deliver them, it's very easy, right? All the spices and stuff that if you go to the grocery store and you want to get seasonings and spices that you don't just keep on hand, and you're trying to make one recipe, you end up spending $7-8 on this jar of spices to make one recipe, and then it sits in your cupboard forever, taking up space, going bad, and then a year later when you want to use it, then now you got to go buy it again. I like HelloFresh because they give you the exact amount of seasoning and spices and stuff that you need, and that way there's less food waste, right? All the produce, all the meats, all the seasonings, all the sauces, they're the exact amount you need. So you save time in the measuring out phase. You save dishes because you're not using measuring spoons or measuring cups. It's great. You could bust out the grill on a nice warm evening and make a dinner from HelloFresh's cookout collection with recipes like melty Monterrey Jack burgers. It is great. You can customize dishes with Hello Custom by swapping out one protein or side for another, upgrade for a more luxe experience, or add protein to a vegetarian meal. That means more choices, more variety, and more meals truly tailored to you. It's 72% cheaper than a restaurant and cheaper than grocery shopping. That's money back in your pocket. So go to HelloFresh.com/SmokingTire16 and use code SmokingTire16 for 16 free meals across 7 boxes and 3 free gifts. HelloFresh.com/SmokingTire16, code SmokingTire16 for 16 free meals across 7 boxes and 3 free gifts. You need to use the URL and the code. HelloFresh.com/SmokingTire16 and then code SmokingTire16. All right, we're also brought to you today in part by Policy Genius. Right? We pay hundreds of dollars a year to protect our homes, our cars, and even our phones, but too many of us aren't taking any steps to protect our family's finances. Mortgage payments, private student loans, and other types of debt don't just disappear if something happens to you. A life insurance policy can provide your loved ones with a financial cushion they can use to cover these costs, and it can provide you with the peace of mind that even in a worst case scenario, they will be protected. And having life insurance through your job might not be enough. Most people need up to 10 times more coverage to properly provide for their families. And coverage through work isn't portable. If you leave your job, the policy doesn't go with you, meaning there could be a gap in coverage when you need it the most. Life insurance typically gets more expensive as you age, so it's smart to get a policy sooner rather than later. By making it easy to compare your options from top companies, Policy Genius can help you make sure that you're not paying 1 cent more than you have to for the coverage you need. Policy Genius is an insurance marketplace that makes it easy to compare quotes from top companies like AIG and Prudential in one place to find your lowest price on life insurance. So you could save 50% or more on life insurance by comparing quotes with Policy Genius. Options start at just $17 a month for $500,000 of coverage. Just click the link in the description or head over to policygenius.com to get personalized quotes in minutes and find the right policy for your needs. The licensed agents at Policy Genius work for you, not the insurance companies, and they're on hand through the entire process to help you understand your options so you can make decisions with confidence. Policy Genius doesn't add extra fees, they don't sell your information, they have thousands of 5-star reviews, and they have options that offer coverage in as little as a week, avoiding unnecessary medical exams. So head over to policygenius.com to get your free life insurance quotes and see how much you could save. Also brought to you in part today by Off the Record. You know Off the Record. We talk about them all the time. Off the Record is the way to avoid having a silly little ticket ruin your driver's license, your insurance, and your finances for years, right? Tickets are not necessarily about safety, unless you do something really dangerous or egregious. Many times they are about raising money for the state, raising your money for the state. And that means there's a whole financial ecosystem around you getting tickets for something very minor, and you're just trying to get to work, right? You get a ticket, you plead guilty, there's the fine. You go to court, there's court costs. You're found guilty. Your insurance rates go up for years sometimes. It's a whole round ecosystem that you do not want to be a part of. That's why Off the Record is here. Off the Record is a service that will match you with a qualified attorney where you live, in your jurisdiction, or necessarily where you live, where you got that ticket. More importantly, maybe you got that ticket somewhere far away from home. Maybe that's why you should use Off the Record. Imagine you getting a ticket and then having to go all the way across the country to a different state to go fight it later. I mean, that's an excellent reason to use Off the Record. They will go fight that ticket on your behalf. You don't have to go back there. That's another expense that you don't need from getting a dumb ticket. I once got a ticket in Virginia, and I lived in New York, and it was mandatory court appearance. I had to go all the way back down to Virginia to fight this ticket. It cost me thousands of dollars, right? If I had Off the Record at this time, they could have just gone for me, made the points go away, kept that ticket off my record, saved me time, saved me money, saved me headaches. So, 2 ways to use Off the Record. You can go to offtherecord.com/TST, or you can download the Off the Record app to your phone and use code TST10 on the Off the Record app. Either method will save you 10% on any legal services booked through Off the Record, okay? Download the app, have it in your phone, you're ready to go. It's so easy. If you get a ticket, you just upload a photo of the ticket to Off the Record and they will do the rest. So go to offtherecord.com/TST or use code TST10 on the Off the Record app. That is how it's done. It's very, very easy. All right, on today's program, legendary IMSA racer, broadcaster, racing expert, and chicken car driving pseudo-comedian Tommy Kendall is on the program. We talk about Formula One racing. We talk about historical race cars. We talk about all kinds of stuff. We talk about NASCAR. We talk about even influencer data. We talk about all kinds of interesting topics. I love Tommy Kendall. I think he is a fantastic chap. His show with Justin Bell, the Torque Show, is awesome. He will be up at Pebble Beach. He commentates racing, and he's a great follow on Twitter, especially during broadcasts of races. Tommy is the man, and today he is on the Smoking Tire Podcast. Dude, thanks for coming down.
You bet.
Just drop right in on the diamond game, huh?
Right. We can go wherever you want to go.
That's why have your own radio show if you can't be your own programming director, right?
And I mean, that's, to be honest, I was thinking about it. You know, I was listening to your show a few days ago or a few episodes ago about the metrics and this, that. And I was like, that could get in your head where you'd like try to tweak this. Whereas, I mean, before you created this show, there was no such thing to emulate. You just did what you did. Yeah. And so to that point, you go wherever your curiosity takes you.
Yeah, and we do. Mm-hmm. And we do. But it's actually, with the metrics, it's more about how you promote the show and what the social media team does that works than what we do in the room. So that's good. So we can still sit here and talk about anything, and they'll find something interesting to cut.
Right.
That diamond thing, that's going to become a clip. It's sad. You got to talk about money, right? You got to talk about investment.
Well, I was going to say, you can put Tommy Kendall, billionaire, and then put aspiring billionaire.
Yeah. So wait, before we got started, you were talking about this Mazda RX-7 that Zach had up on the screen. Where'd it go? Is it still there? Mm-hmm. This thing is awesome. The Malibu Grand Prix Mazda RX-7 race car, which made me think about the Monterrey Historics coming up. Are you involved?
I am not involved in the Historics. Justin and I will be there, covering the Pebble Beach concourse. Mm-hmm. And then...
got your suit yet?
I'm trying to decide...
Gonna go a little crazy?
Well, I was probably going to go with one that I got for last year. Justin's a little bit like a gal that won't wear the same gown twice. Yeah. So I'm sure he'll probably be heading to Suit Supply, and maybe I'll tag along because
that guy Rutledge gets his suits from. That's the guy. Rutledge's suits are fucking crazy,
and they're like custom made.
Yeah, but they're not expensive. Yeah. They're like a couple $100, but they're just like insane looking. Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you go to fit in, or do you go to stand out?
No, I kind of go with classic. I want it to look nice. The tie, again, my wife, she gave me a special tie for last year that I have to give it back to her. She has possession of this special Hermes tie, and so I got crazy comments on the tie.
All right,
and so that's a little thing like
go with what works.
Yeah, little pop.
You got the Panama hat.
I do have a Panama hat that I got at Amelia this year. Being fair, I have to have one, and so just function does it cover. Yeah. But now I actually have a pretty nice.
I think this year I'm going to wear a Panama hat. Yeah. My first year going Panama hat. I think so. Yeah. It's harder to find a good one than you think.
Oh yeah, no, it's there's now with Instagram there are some. Oh, yeah. What do you call a hat guy? There's a
not a haberdasher.
I think that's right.
Is that right?
I believe it is.
Yeah,
okay.
haberdasher.
Isn't that haberdasher?
Yeah, there's one on Abbot Kinney I ride my bike by. Nick Fouquet.
Yeah, that's the dude who sells like the Smokey the Bear hat to Pharrell.
Okay, exactly.
Yeah, his shit it's like Johnny Depp, Pirates of the Caribbean. Everything's got a feather or an onyx or some shit on it.
He's got this whole. He knows what he's doing. Yeah, he's got this.
He's like the celebrity hat guy,
and he's kind of a hat. He sort of embellishes it for you, whether it's the feather or the flower or the. So.
Bring a checkbook.
Yeah.
Them shits they're no joke, those hats. They're fucking expensive. They're like $2-3 grand.
I'm
you know what works
it's
there?
Milliner before the comment.
Oh, milliner. What's a haberdasher?
Just clothing.
Clothing,
yeah.
correct.
Oh, okay. Yeah. You know who works at Nick Fouquet is Nino's lady.
Oh, makes
She
sense.
works there. Yeah, our good friend.
fashionable.
Our good friend is a fashion designer, and his lady works over there. I would go hat shopping over there with you, but I would be afraid at how much money I end up spending.
See that now. Therein lies, if you don't know what you're doing,
Yeah.
it's a little bit like everything. You go to the safe place. You know that guy's not going to let you walk out of there looking too silly. I mean, he's gonna
I have
he's
a
gonna
feeling
mark
that I
you.
couldn't walk out of
Yeah.
there looking cool. I think anything I buy, I would look stupid in. Like I can't look cool.
Nah.
Because what works with mesh shorts?
Well, here's the thing. Because you've never worn that hat,
Yeah.
it actually reminds me, when I first got this watch, I'm like, that's too
There's a
big.
lovely
I said,
IWC.
I
big
said,
pilot.
I can't wear that. I can't. That's too big.
Yeah.
When the watches first started getting big, and then and the same thing with sunglasses, when they kind of got bigger, you're like, these things look huge, and people are like, oh, I like your shades.
Yeah, you gotta
You've
own
just
that
never
shit.
seen yourself that way, and
you're
pretty
right.
soon
You got to own it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I have this like Australian kangaroo leather floppy hat that I wear a lot that I feel stupid in when I put it in my house. And then when I go out, I'm like, no, I'm the man. Mm-hmm. So I think maybe I'd have the same kind of thing.
I guess it applies to what you drive. Same thing.
Yeah.
Own it.
You got a cool ride up there?
In Monterey,
Yeah.
I do not have a cool ride.
Got to call in these favorites.
No,
bro.
I do need to put a few calls in. We'll see. That's a tough weekend. I don't know if I'm usually CD list in that world because as a
you're not
journalist
up there.
Well, now that we're the host broadcaster for the
Yeah.
actual Pebble Beach concourse, I'm probably
I feel
for
like
for that weekend. I
feel like
probably
you don't
do
know
have
the
a
kind
little
of rank
juice.
you can pull
on that
on
weekend.
Kendall.
I have a little bit of juice.
Yeah. What's your favorite event of the week, concourse week?
Obviously, I like the races. I love going to the races. I mean, there are so many good. There's anxiety because you can't go to them all.
I know.
I mean, Pebble's what made it original. And I remember the first time I ever went to Pebble was the year I think they had 7 Bugatti Royales there, and this was
that all of them?
It was.
I think
it's
that's all of
close
them.
to all of them. I think it was one or
The
two.
Type 41 Royale, right?
Yes.
That's the Type 41, yeah.
with the wheels that tall. Yeah.
Yeah, like the first car to ever have like 30s on it.
And that was got to be
I would have liked
30
to see
years
that.
ago, you know?
Yeah.
And so,
It's like 90s, right?
yeah, early 90s, or maybe even 80s. So, so that made an impression on me. And, I've been going to the historics for as long as that, you know. I remember before I drove a race car, before my dad would let me drive the cars to the grid because he raced there a few times, and then I drove one car out to the photo shoot. You know, my dad had
Driving a race car like on the street.
No,
Or
just
up
a
to
couple hundred yards.
I
I lived for like, hey Dad, can I drive to the pit
Yeah.
lane? Yeah. Can I drive to the photo shoot? Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, those
When
are
you're a kid, any driving is good driving.
Formative experiences.
Yeah. I've come to like the quail the best, but it might just be the champagne and oysters.
There's not a thing wrong with that
Yeah.
whole day.
But I like kind of the nighttime vibe in town, sort of that in between time where it's like the dinner's just ending and the auctions are just getting started and people are kind of driving the crazy shit around the street and you're sitting at an outdoor table and then it's like, you know, there's a D-type coming by in first gear and it sounds like pit road.
It's literally like you got injected into the world's best kind of car, you know, metaverse.
Yeah.
And it's real. you
Yeah.
know? Like I used to say about the Quail, I say the parking lot for the Quail is as good as
Parking lot's awesome.
as good as any other car show. You know, you walk through, you're like, oh, well.
Yeah, the parking lot is like a super high-end cars and coffee.
Yeah.
And you don't have to pay anything to get in. You can go wander that parking lot for $0. Someone did a great story a couple years ago about like the best things to see for free, you know, at that week, and it's like the Carmel at the end of the 17-mile drive.
Yep.
Right, whatever, the Tour de Elegance, the end of the Tour de
End of the
Elegance,
tour.
yeah, in Carmel, in the center of town there, where they line them all up. That's like all the heavy hitters from Sunday, right there, come to you for free. The parking lot at the Quail, just sitting on the road. Sitting on the side of the road to Laguna, the 68 or whatever it is, and just watching cars going to the races. So many good opportunities.
It's funny because, everyone jockeys for all the right tickets and the seats and so forth. But the reality is, I mean, maybe there have been stories about this, all the stuff you can do for free there. And
it's awesome.
Now you got to sleep in your car because that's the hardest part.
I think there's been
room.
stories about that too. Zach once did a camping weekend.
Where? For
Pebble.
Yeah. Our friend Thaddeus and I, we drove the Kit Cobra that I built with my dad and my brother. Mm-hmm. So we drove that from Santa Cruz to Big Sur. Found a campsite, the first one that was available. We didn't plan. We're not good at it.
So you camped in the...
We camped in the Cobra, slept on the ground, and pulled in. All the campers were like, whoa, cool, weird. And we just slept on the ground. But then at 5 a.m., when we started it up to go to Monterrey, I'm sure they were like a lot less cool about our car. But yeah, it was pretty rad.
No one has stormed the beach in a Zodiac yet. We're waiting for this to happen.
Well,
so someone storms the beach in a Zodiac and tears off the wetsuit, James Bond style, and there's the leisure suit underneath.
Don't tell Justin.
I mean, if he does
that was originally my idea.
It was Zach's
recorded
idea.
Here, so if Justin does it, he'll know where we got it. But I figured that's a good way to never get invited again.
You get in once, though.
Yeah, you get in once.
And then when you hit the lawn, you just run.
Or they congratulate you.
Yeah. I think they would have some respect. If you got out of there and took off the wetsuit and there was an actual suit on underneath,
I think
and someone in a position of power saw you, they'd probably be like, you know what? Just give the dude a lanyard.
And the press would be good for them.
Yeah,
they need more people getting tickets.
That'd be awesome. Yeah.
I like it. Now I'm not really that afraid of sharks anymore. Something about that bay to me
seems awful sharky.
Seems like it would be full of sharks.
Most of the great whites eat at Ano Nuevo, which is north, like 3 hours from Pebble Beach.
That's
and
far
maybe
enough.
Clint Eastwood just sits out there with a 6-shooter and just shoots at the sharks if they come in. So it might be okay.
Might be okay. Something about that water.
I get it. Yeah.
It seems malicious. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know exactly what you mean. It's rocky. Like there's a lot of things that would sink a Zodiac, I think.
The sharks in Pebble are at the auctions, right?
They're hovering.
They work for the auction houses.
Hovering around, ready to loan you money for a last-minute purchase. Have you met those folks? The loan sharks?
No.
Oh yeah.
Really?
Oh yeah. Ask one of the heavy hitters that you know to point them out when you're up there, because they hover, and they know you're good for it.
Right.
But you didn't call the family office because you didn't think you were going to buy everything. But now you're a little tips. Now you're ready to spend, and there they are, ready to loan you short term.
So how does that work at the auction? You have to register.
They will buy it.
But I mean, if you don't do that.
Well, you've already registered to get in.
Okay, but so if you're going to buy something, do you have to pre-register a line of credit up to a certain amount?
Normally, yes.
Normally, yes. So that's how that works.
Yeah. Normally, yes. But if you're not ready to pay there, you wanted to register because all your friends did, and that's how you get the good tickets and the open bar. But you're not really ready. Or maybe you were ready to buy up to, maybe you cleared credit up to $300,000. And now this thing you want is
George Bear's golf cart's
$1 million. That's $1 million.
Yeah.
They're ready to cover you.
Really?
Yeah.
Maybe you got a liquidity problem, Tommy. You just got a cash flow issue.
That's weird.
Maybe you
that's
need to
almost
put it through
like
the business.
A third party in the casino.
It is. It's
wild.
a
marker,
loan
but from
shark
someone
in
else,
the
yeah.
casino.
Wow.
Yeah.
But the interest rate's reasonable. It's 6%.
Yeah, it's just
for the day.
Right, private banking.
For the day.
Yeah. I'll get you out of here.
Yeah.
Tomorrow you pay me. They exist. I met them. I was like, this is another fucking world. I don't get it. It's crazy.
Well, it's like the VC of the car worlds, right?
Yeah.
Just okay. They private equity, whatever you want to call it. And they just say, all right, I'll give you money for your idea, and your idea is buying a car that you can hopefully pay for tomorrow.
Yeah.
Auctions are a genius invention, and I mean when you think about it.
Yeah. Negotiating upwards.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then alcohol.
I mean, it's the best.
Yeah.
Like I think you should end all online auctions at 11 p.m. on a Friday. Like when I sell our customer cars, I'm like, can you bump this so it ends a little later in the evening?
It's got to at least be in the happy hour East Coast.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. We need these people 2 drinks in by the time we get to the last hour, for sure.
I feel like someone got really drunk and they were at a market in Morocco somehow, where everything, Morocco, Middle East, Israel, whatever, a lot of haggling down, right, at these markets. Yeah. And they were like, what if we flip it around from these sober fucks? And they just like, let's bid up and get drunk.
It's wild. And with cars, it's, we touched on it briefly, but it's very interesting to me how willing people are to buy really expensive stuff online without really vetting it a lot of times. I mean, they assume it's been vetted by someone else, and but we've sold cars for people here that are very expensive, and there's no one coming to inspect them, even though we make the car available. And it's weird, very weird.
Wild.
I guess at least at those auctions, like usually if it gets to RM or Gooding, it's been vetted by somebody. I think. Now
my lone experience in that world was one of my championship all-sport cars, the only championship car to ever trade hands. There were 3 championships. Two were won by one car that Roush still owns. One was out, and then another one was an all-sport car that didn't win a championship. So someone told me, hey, I think one of your old cars is going to auction. And it was Mike Dingman, who was a wealthy guy who was on the board of Ford for a long time. He was my teammate. He passed away, and they were selling a bunch of his cars. And it was, I can't remember, it was RM. And so I called.
Was he involved in the racing effort, or did he buy it afterwards?
He was involved in the racing effort. Okay. And funny story how that all worked out. But so so someone said, I think your car is being auctioned. So I called Ramsey when he was there, and I said, hey, Ramsey, I heard he says, no, I don't think this is one of yours. So I went on the website and looked at the pictures, and it was done up in his Dingman colors, car 14 with all his sponsors and so forth. And I looked in one of the cockpit shots, and there was 3 sway bar levers, and I was the only person. I said, that's my car.
Oh, okay.
I called my crew chief, and I said, Binks,
like, listen here, I use the 3 sway bar levers.
I said, I think this is my car. He says, yeah. I said, don't you say a word. You and I are the only people that, and so then it circled back, and Ramsey says, hey, we're hearing different things about this car. It might be your car. And I'm like, yeah, and so I got 2 conversations going in my head. I'm thinking, if I could steal this thing, I'd like to steal this thing. If I can't steal it, I want it to go for a record.
Yeah.
And so I was trying to game this.
You're trying to keep it down until it gets past what you can afford. And then it's like, send it, baby.
Well, so it turned into this whole thing, and RM was hearing different things, and so they went to Roush, and Roush says, "Well, it's on the paperwork." I said, "Roush wouldn't know if it ran him over. He made 33 different chassis, and they changed bodies." I said, "There's no way he would know." And
was it Roush who can't see? Is that Roush?
Doesn't
he have some eyesight issues?
He wears thick glasses.
Yeah. No disrespect to Mr. Roush, he's a legend. But saying his ability to inspect things might be slightly.
Well, he was also
he lost vision in one eye at some point from an injury.
Plane crash.
Plane crash. Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah.
And. But that was more because he's just so busy. He didn't weld the tubes together. He didn't, he just made sure the money was there, and he made sure it was fast, and made sure it won. And so it all started ratcheting up, and I'm like, they can't verify this. And so RM doesn't want to say what it is.
Yeah.
And so finally, one of Dingman's kids called my crew chief and said, and he said, I couldn't lie to the kid. I had to tell him. He said, if you take the roof off on the top of the roll hoop, it'll be stamped chassis number. And it matched the invoice from Roush. The crazy thing was this car, why you would paint a all-sport car in a less valuable configuration. I think what happened is when Mike quit racing, it was literally all of a sudden after the Miami Grand Prix, Neil Bonnet had been killed at Daytona. His wife said, no more. And so I went to see him in the Bahamas, and he said, I got something to tell you. I said, what? He says, I'm out. I said, what do you mean? I said, you funded all this development. The cars are killer now. And he says, I can't do it. I'm out. And so he never ever went to the track again. And so I think and then probably a couple of years later, he called Jack and said, hey, Jack, I love you. I'd like to have my car. Send me my car. And I think Jack had probably sold his car.
Yeah.
And so they're like, take that one and put his body on it and give it to him. And so it's on the invoice that it was my chassis number, maybe he knew and he just wanted a car that looked like his car. But it was ironic because as in his configuration, it wasn't worth that much. Long story short, it sold for more than double or about triple what a normal car does, more and 50% more than any car had ever sold before. It sold for $720,000.
This is a Trans Am Mustang?
Trans Am Mustang.
Oh,
yeah.
cool. That's
so
good. I mean, for that time, that's
Yes.
big money.
It was big money. I
Yeah.
mean, a regular car is a couple hundred. One of my Berettas sold for $500, and one Pruitt car sold for $500, and so that one sold, and it was to a big Ford collector.
Yeah.
And so the right guy got it. I was online. Before I could even get my hand out of my pocket, it was hey.
What were you ready to go in up to? What do you think?
I mean, I would have paid as much as I could at that
Yeah,
time. I
yeah.
could have swung about $225,
Yeah.
$250, something like that.
Does it feel cool that a car you raced, is valued more than other cars like in the field or in the same class?
It's nice that they're, and it's not just the one. Like I said, the one Beretta, it was the first one. It sold for $5 when everything else was $2. And part of that was Canepa.
Yeah.
Canepa got it from the old CEO. No one had seen any of these cars for 30 years, and so this car shows up. And
Bruce knows how to turn them. He knows how to turn them.
Yes.
Yeah, we're gonna get Bruce on the show soon. He's a good dude. I always like seeing him at the track.
Talk about a guy who knows.
Everything at the shop, he knows every nut. He took us on a literal 3-hour tour. I think the tour was supposed to be 45 minutes. By the end of it, it was like, Bruce, I'm like, I need some dinner or something.
Yeah.
This is like, and he's like, and have you seen this? He's like, you got to look at the Kevlar on the inside of this. I'm like, all right, man, cool.
Yeah,
he knows how to turn them though. Huh?
Yeah, his client, his Rolodex is beyond strong.
If you're not on his email list, his weekly email list is hysterical. It'll be like, deal of the week, Porsche 962 Camel, and it'll be like, and he won't even say what the price is, but it's like, oh yeah, I'm sure this is the deal of the week, man. It's like $3.5 million. Okay,
right? Yeah,
it's really funny.
He's strong.
Oh, there it is.
Yeah, that's the one.
Good looking race car.
Now that actual chassis, I drove 2 cars that year. I own that one, but I only drove it in a couple races, including that one. That was when we at Elkhart Lake.
What do you do with these old race cars that you own? Do you just drink a beer and stare at them and smile?
Well, most of them have been stashed for 30 years. The RX-7, when it ran at Monterrey, it hadn't run for a long time, and so I had to move them out of where they were being stored, where my dad had a building. And so I sent them back to Michigan. My crew chief looks after them, and so now that the shoe's on the other foot, now that I actually have to pay for it.
Yeah,
it's painful because he'll call me and says, "Oh my God, I found the dog ring transmission for the RX-7." I'm like, "Oh, sweet!" And he's like, "How much?" He goes, $7,500. I'm like, "Oh,
yeah."
I said, "Should we wait for the next one?" He goes, "There won't be another one." I said, "Okay." And so I said, and then every time he calls me, it's $5,000, $7,000.
Yeah.
And so
So they are in various states of mechanical sortedness?
That one is as it drove off the track, the race after this one, St. Pete Grand Prix in 1990, and it hasn't turned a wheel since. And so it needs the good news is it looks exactly like that with that paint, and it doesn't need to be restored, but everything needs
mechanical.
to be, fuel cell.
What engine's in this car?
That has, it was a V6. It was a 4.5 liter V6. That car I ran this weekend was interesting. They went up on the screen because we had a splayed valve slide injector V6, and they kept adding weight to us all year long, even before we started winning. And then I ended up winning 5 races, clinched the champion, and they kept adding weight. By the time we got
made you faster.
Well, it did. I didn't realize how much it was slowing us down because we were still winning. But we decided to enter a third car for the last several races for manufacturer's points with a carbureted older cylinder head engine, which is what this was. And R.K. Smith was driving it. He drove it at Mid-Ohio. He had only driven single-seaters. He's like, get up in this car and make sure everything's right. I got in this car, and it was 175 pounds lighter. And at Elkhart, on the test day, I came in, I told my crew chief, I said, I'm racing this one.
Switch the bodies.
Put
my name on the fucking roof of this thing. Let's go.
And 170, it had less power, less torque by, I don't know how much, but 175 pounds, the braking zones at Elkhart. It was probably the easiest win I ever had. It was like, and that's when I really learned 175 pounds is a lot of weight, but you think, even being close to the sport, it transformed the car. So like in certain Formula One tracks, the simulations, I've heard like literally 10 pounds can be 2/10 on certain tracks.
Yeah, and it depends where the 10 pounds is. And
yeah.
Is it sprung or unsprung and blah, 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 blah. But 175 pounds is different.
Yeah.
You know how much 175 pounds costs in a 911? You know what I mean?
Yes.
It's $100,000.
Yes. Yes.
For that.
The crazy thing is what people do is they work to get 300 pounds out of the car and then they ballast it back up.
Well, can't you? But you can ballast it where you want it.
Yes.
Which can help in some ways, right?
You don't think about it, but if you have a car that's 200 pounds of ballast, 200 pounds even in lead is a lot.
Yeah.
And so that's where the tungsten comes in. People run tungsten. In Formula One, this is one of my favorite stories, some of the teams were going to run depleted uranium because it was so dense.
Get the fuck out of here.
And they had to write a rule a rule prohibiting it, or those idiots were going to say, this is better CG. We're going to do this.
Oh my God! Do you picture Jackie Stewart somewhere going, this is very unsafe?
Yes.
Yeah, the Defense Department is somewhere going, we're picking up a satellite reading over Daytona.
So it's racing. Pick your poison. Is it faster? I'll do it.
That is so racing.
Depleted uranium?
I know a guy at the Pentagon. He's going to get us some extra depleted uranium.
What year was that? Like, what generation?
This is in the 90s, I think. This is when the fuel was, really nasty stuff that just breathing it was not good for you. Because back then they had all the additives.
I heard Williams was working on a Mr. Fusion.
Yes.
That's crazy.
Just shows.
Penske sending guys into Pendleton at night, just go to the AC-10 Warthog field target area and just dig.
Told him I was going to build him a bomb. Instead, I delivered him an empty case full of used pinball machine parts. That's fucking nuts.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's the racer mentality, like the stuff. There are people they pop people in NASCAR for drilling.
He's got a Nomex suit with a radiation suit over it.
They threw guys out. They drilled holes in their roll cage.
Oh yeah,
that's smart.
I always reference it because one of my favorite documentaries ever made is the movie One, the number one, narrated by Michael Fassbender. Just a fucking great documentary, and there's so many good tidbits of information in it, on top of the fact that the editing and the cinematography and the pacing of it is really good. It's really fun to watch. But they actually, there's 10 seconds with Max Mosley, who, younger people may just know him for the Nazi thing, but he did used to be a driver and a team owner, and he was involved in all this stuff. And he went and him and... I guess he was working with a young Bernie Ecclestone at the time, and they went to the race organizers and they said the cars had gotten twice as fast from one year to the next. People start dying. The racetracks had no safety standards whatsoever. He went to the race organizers, whatever it was called at the time, and he said, this is very, very unsafe. People are getting hurt. And they said, well, why don't you just slow down? You could just slow down, and it's very obvious when he put it into this terms that but we win if we go faster. We're incentivized to not do
ultimate, I guess, prisoner's dilemma. Someone's going to take the chance.
Yeah.
So you have to save them from themselves.
Yeah, and he said, the next line is, he said, if you take two cars, and this one is very safe, and this one is very dangerous, and it's 2 seconds faster, the drivers will choose the dangerous fast one every single time.
Without a doubt.
Yeah.
Without a doubt. There's a version of that. Yeah, it's pretty pure. Like a lot of driver shootouts, it took me a while. You don't have that many driver shootouts, but you hear about people testing for drivers. And it's a little clearer now, the fast guy always wins. But back then it was like, we're going to evaluate different criteria, how well spoken you are and how good you are with the engineers and so forth. I tell every young driver, I said, the only thing, and they don't want you to crash the car, they don't want you to do that. I said, the only thing that matters is you're the fastest.
Yeah.
Even if you crash the car in the test. If you're clearly faster
fast lap
and you crash the car, I'm pretty sure you're still getting the ride.
Wow.
Just how it is.
They'll give you a speaking coach.
Yes.
They'll give you a social media manager and a stylist.
They say all this stuff matters. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Does it matter then if you have 5 people who are very, very fast? Is that where they start to separate? Like, okay, you can talk to the engineers. You understand how the car works and how to make it work, and you can speak that language?
Yeah, as the engineering has become so prevalent, it's still important, but it'd be hard to really ascertain that, because you can put on a good show. If you're just interested and conversant in that, it doesn't mean you actually. It'd be hard in a test. Mm-hmm. Chip Ganassi, I don't know how he does it, but he makes some curious choices on drivers, and he always comes up with, he's got a sense about the drivers. And he picks guys like Palou, he's in the middle of the whole the contract dispute with McLaren and Zach Brown on, but he's signed Palou after a rookie year with Coyne, and there was nothing to me that says, oh, that guy's a star. Ganassi signs him, champion first year.
Jeez.
Yeah.
He's
always had. There was a period where he had a couple duds one year, but ever since then Zanardi and he has people, I guess, that recommend that he listens to. But
he's got to have a scouting team, I imagine.
Yeah, but I think there's something. I think it comes down to him. He develops a feel, kind of, and it's
interesting.
Yeah.
Who else has that?
There's a guy in sports cars, Peter Barron, who now coincidentally, I think, calls strategy for one of the Ganassi cars. He used to run his own team. He used to pride himself. I think Brandon Hartley, when he first came over before he signed with Factory Porsche, Renger van der Zande, who's now Ganassi. A lot of these guys' first ever races in America were Peter Barron.
Oh, interesting.
It's a little bit like finding the car before everybody else discovers it. They're a lot cheaper when no one knows they're good.
Yeah. I
wanted to ask you something about, speaking of drivers all running for the same team, and we can go back to your driving, but something that's always interested me is how two drivers can be driving, quote, the same car, same team, different actual automobiles, but the same car, but their setups can be different, and the laws of physics are consistent for both people, and yet there is this separation of they like the car a little stiffer, they like it a little softer, and they could run the same time. How does that happen?
Well, it's so complicated, the act of engineering a car. The variables, I was just at Toronto with McLaren, and we were, I was emceeing, but did a couple garage tours. Just between caster, camber, toe, those things, everything is camber helps you. The more camber you have, the more, generally speaking, more grip in a corner. Well, but then the tire's not flat when you're braking.
Right.
And so you want the tire flat for braking. Well, caster says, well, it actually adds camber when you turn, but it's more flat when it's straight. So why not just a ton of caster? Well, because then you can't turn the wheel as much.
Right. Yeah.
And so everything has a trade-off. So all of that's crazy complicated, but it's complemented by, and it's so simple, you think about the difference between the worst driver in the world and the best driver in the world are the combination of two pedals that control the fore aft weight distribution and a steering wheel that turns left and right that controls it left and right. And so the difference between Lewis Hamilton and someone who is just dreadful,
you can say my name, it's fine.
is how they combine those. And so the inputs interact with that incredibly complicated machine with all these variables. And so the differences are small, but the good ones, that's why they're just consistently better. And so, and another piece of it is everyone has a slightly different style. And so a lot of people mimic teammates, but the ones that really understand, whether it's sort of gut feel or analytical understanding of it works both ways.
That's where you get the Lauda, where he's he knows how to set up the car kind of thing.
Yeah, and Al Jr. was more couldn't tell you anything, but was a savant. I mean, just sort of true natural. And so, but if you don't understand what's going on, what works in this car will be slightly different. If the difference between last year's F1 rules and this year's F1 rules, the cars are quite a bit different.
Yeah.
And so the drivers of performance are going to be different. The things that are the limiting factors on the car, whether it's the tire or the corner entry, mid corner, all these different tire deg, this, that, and the other. And so you can emulate to a pretty high level, but to constantly be that's where Alonso, I think, is underrated. No matter what the package, no matter what the generation, no matter what, he always figures out better than almost everybody else how to extract. You compare Alonso to his teammates. I don't think there's probably Hamilton and Verstappen. So those three guys, as lopsided a comparison in terms of qualifying performance and all that kind of stuff. They clearly are on a different level.
What are some of your big picture takeaways from this year's F1 season so far? You been surprised by anything, or impressed or disappointed by anything?
They should make Adrian Newey illegal. I mean, I'm kind of kidding, but you look at his career literally since the mid '80s, and every car he's worked on, whether it was in sports cars or Indy cars, it's, other than the Mercedes era more recently, I guess in the Schumacher Ferrari era, but more often than not, he gets it on a greater level, and so now it's so complicated. I think everyone's smart and everyone's working really hard and everybody has good tools, but someone kind of says this is the biggest area of potential, and I think that's probably where he, is worth his weight in platinum.
He just, on the road car side, he's just kicked Aston Martin in the teeth pretty hard, huh?
Yeah.
He was like, I have an idea. You're going to sell a $4 million hypercar. It's going to be the fastest thing around. It's going to be insane. Nah, I'm not really into it. 3 months later, I have a new $4 million. I have a new $6 million hypercar. It'll beat everything around.
And you could tell the first time you saw that was different.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
So that's one, is just how good he is. It's interesting because Ferrari, it's almost like the scriptwriters did it, and it's even
Drive
better.
to Survive is now inverting and is now writing the actual season.
Well, but you've got Ferrari that's so exciting and so frustrating. It's like Ferrari. It's on brand.
It's like owning
brand.
one.
Yeah,
it's like
totally
it's just like owning one. Yeah.
So, yeah, but I love Leclerc. I thought the last couple seasons, people used to crap on the Mercedes dominance. I disagree. I get it, but it's almost more interesting when you have a dominant, whether it's the Jordan era or the Lakers or whatever. When you have dominance, it's sort of the ultimate benchmark that everyone goes against. And last year they weren't,
So you would rather see people chasing a dominant team or than a variety of winners?
I like it. I mean, I like it when it's not, when it's up in the air a little bit, but I don't. It's different. But I also totally enjoy the racing that way too. Sometimes it's like, well, they're expected to win, and somehow even when they're behind, they still figure out a way to do it.
Yeah.
Last year, it was like King Kong versus Godzilla with Red Bull and Verstappen and Hamilton and Mercedes. Until the last race, which was so unfortunate.
How do you see the gradual shift maybe away from some of the older, more classic circuits to new street circuits?
I don't mind it. There should be a mix. You like NASCAR went to all these big tracks that could seat more people, and they were all the same. And I'm like, that seemed crazy to me.
Did you go to the Coliseum?
I did not go to the Coliseum.
It was fun.
Yeah, no, it looked really.
I went. It was a good time, actually. I don't think the TV did it justice because what made it great was that you could actually watch the whole track.
Yeah.
In one view.
Yeah.
And you could watch a car catch a foot a lap.
Yeah.
It was neat. It was really fun.
Yeah, kudos to them.
Now,
I think they're working their way back from this oblivion where they had all these homogenized tracks, and they got rid of North Wilkesboro, which I always thought had great racing, Rockingham. And I'm like, if your main product is television, I mean, I get you want to have suites and you want to have a lot of people in the stands. Revenue, but the big revenue is always TV. So what's important is your TV product the best it can be?
Yeah.
And it wasn't when they went to all these mile and a halves that were about the same. So same thing with Formula One. You need to have the right mix.
Well, I think the argument with Formula One that I tend to agree with is that not everybody wants to go out to the middle of nowhere. And if you bring the race to the people, you'll get a new, younger, more diverse demographic of people who will get into it. And you might earn yourself some lifelong fans that might next year be excited enough to go out to the middle of nowhere. You have to
be careful a little bit chasing that too much. There is some truth to it, but some of those people are, it's just the cool thing to do, and they don't really care about the racing. Drive to Survive is been an amazing phenomenon.
Yeah,
and it's real. And I mean, I was in Miami, and I was at this thing at the Pirelli, had a pop-up store, and Gunther Steiner walked in towards the end, and I heard all these like these young girls like squeal, and I'm like, I'm like, oh, it's Gunther Steiner. Wow.
Yeah.
So, and they were all, they were Miami. They were all done up, dressed up. You know, you wouldn't have pegged them as
Gunther Steiner
as
fans.
Race folks.
Yeah. I love that show, and I think, I mean, even though there are some manufactured drama, because that's what TV is, I mean, it's made me care about people's fortunes that I otherwise would not have ever even heard their name. I wouldn't have paid attention to an Alex Albon or Pierre Gasly, who actually I think is a great follow on Instagram.
Yep.
I love Pierre Gasly now. I think he's fucking great. And it makes the race for 7th much more interesting than the main broadcast would otherwise make it.
Well, it gets people inside, and it's funny because there's so many different layers and levels to appreciate on it. Some people are total tech, geeks. And so a lot of those people, some of them like the personality stuff. Some people only like the tech and the strategy. And so, but there's something for everyone in Formula One. And some people love the good-looking young men that are studs, and
Gunther Steiner.
Yeah, like
the ladies are huge fans.
Yeah. How do you make a bunch of Germans seem really charming? Like that. This is how their editor has figured out how to make.
I mean, he is very charming and very funny.
No, Gunther Steiner is.
But I know what you mean.
Like Toto is not particularly charming, but they have made him very charming.
Well, he's charming in his way. I mean, the smashing of the headsets and he's straight out of Central
Zach
Casting.
does the best fucking Toto. His Toto is perfect. It's real good. No, I put him on the spot.
You absolutely did. I haven't done it in weeks, but I'll find a spot.
We'll call it back. He'll drop one in 20 minutes.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Do you have a favorite team that you like to watch, or are you just a fan of the whole thing?
I'm a Mercedes fan. I tend to.
You drove here in a Mercedes?
I did drive here in a Mercedes. Yeah. I'm not a big Verstappen fan.
Neither are we.
Yeah, I have huge appreciation for what he does and his skill. I don't care for the way he races. It was like last year, for example. He pushes the rules. He bends them to the point of braking, and he's going to force them. And when you have a weak sort of chief steward that doesn't want to make tough calls.
Yeah. We're talking about the guy who quit?
Yeah. And so, he got moved and then quit. But so
he got moved to the basement like Milton.
Yes.
He was sent to Alaska.
Yes. That said, it was clearly the right way to race because he created an advantage, and they didn't call him on it most of the time. And so, and I think Lewis, there's no angels there, but Lewis, I think, actually has a code. Like one of the things that they actually had to write a rule for with Max early in his career, Max would move in the brake zones. And even to some of the stewards who are good people, we're missing this. I'm like, that is a huge deal because there was one, I think it was at Hockenheim a couple years back.
What is the regulation?
The regulation now is you're not allowed to move in the brake zone.
Meaning like a defensive move a
defensive move. It used to be the car in front could move as long as he moved preemptively.
Okay.
A lot of times. And so, no matter where it was. And so, like in the brake zone, if someone moves in the brake zone, you're not to them yet, and so you have an opportunity to move. But what ends up happening is, even if you have to lighten your pressure on the brakes for 0.2 of a second if you have the wheel straight and you're on max brake and you have to make an adjustment to his adjustment, you've got to lighten up on the brake to put a little steering in. And now, with the braking distance of those cars, you're now 50 feet past where you were, and you're going to drive right into his door, and it looks like it's your fault.
Right.
When it was his thing that it's like the butterfly effect. It's this subtle thing, and it takes a really astute person. Now, the other drivers, you could tell from their reaction because they were consistent, and they were like irate. Like it's like someone pointed a gun at them, which they, in effect, kind of did.
Yeah, it's very risky stuff.
Yeah, and so my point is Hamilton, there's certain things Hamilton just won't do, I think, even though the rules might allow it. And so whether it's code, none of them are choir boys, but Max takes it to just a whole new level and says, I'm going to force you to make tough calls.
Is
I know you
that
don't wanna make.
kind of Senna-like?
Yeah.
Which is interesting because, Senna's been dead for 25 years, but he's 26 years, but he's he's revered for his skill and stuff like that.
Single-mindedness.
Yeah, but does the legend ignore some of those
Schumachers?
kind of things?
A lot of have that in
Right,
it,
parking in the middle. That
Yes, and it's this calculation. You're like, why would you do that? You're like, because that was better for him, know. And we've all done it to a degree. I guess maybe Max just takes it to a degree that I think is not cool.
Yeah. Is that kind of like, it sort of happens with like in NASCAR, if we kind of now with rose-colored glasses like respect people who in the like Holman and Moody and whatever who found the loopholes in the system and built a
7/8 car,
a 7/8
like
scale Chevelle or whatever the fuck it was, and stuff like that.
Yeah. It's funny, yeah. In the past, it's charming. In the present, it's cheating.
Yeah.
So, and that's one of the things about people talk about fans. People say, "Can you believe these?" I said, "The root of fan is fanatic."
Yeah.
And so everything I just said about Hamilton, people are like, "What are you talking about? He does it. Max does it. He does it." So you're who you like also colors it.
Sure.
The whole confirmation bias thing, and being on Team Lewis or Team, and ultimately it's what you want people to care.
Yeah.
Which now they care deeply.
It seems like the rules surrounding racing are designed to like increase competitiveness, right? And balance out the difference between rich and poor. I mean, relatively speaking, of course, a little bit. Do you think those changes have worked and are working?
Well, it's funny because in Formula One specifically,
no, not in
not
in America. They ain't working fucking here, buddy. I'm talking about in Formula One.
The rules shape the game. You can't, sort of. You can't stop, people from spending money on better people. And then, like for example, they're not allowed to work during the August break,
right?
And I know that they all have burner emails, and they're burning up the communication with suppliers and this on side channels.
That seems hard to enforce.
Yeah, some of that stuff. So what you want is, everyone says they want parity. Parity isn't great if it's sort of artificial. What you want is a thing that tests them and separates and identifies the best performers. So I mean, when you have that. Every other sport doesn't have this huge mechanical assist. There's no other sport like it. I mean, I guess horses, but in tennis, if you're the best tennis player in the world, you're going to show it.
Yeah.
Golf, et cetera, and racing is unique in that, and so you can't separate it completely. I like.
How about yachting?
Oh,
I think sailing, yacht. Yeah, I mean any kind of racing, but
anything that relies on mechanicals for an advantage, or as the foundation of the competition, I would say.
Yeah.
You don't want to take away their areas where they can show off. Like Adrian Newey should be able to show that he's smarter than everyone. Yeah. And so that's part of the appeal, is the innovation. So I joked that Lemons Racing was one of the few places where you could actually have really clean sheet creativity.
You're not wrong.
Yeah.
People come up with crazy shit for that race.
Yeah, and Pikes Peak, in the
Pikes Peak is another good
attack.
one.
Yeah. So you don't want to lose that.
Yeah.
So
the innovation we saw at Pikes Peak in some of the homebrew stuff was wild, really wild.
My crew chief Dan Binks, who was in that article, he called me. He says, "I got an idea for a Pikes Peak car." I don't know if he's actually going to do it, but it's like it's wild.
I mean, would you do Pikes Peak, or have you?
I have not, and at this point, I might do it in like the Porsches or something like that. I would not do like an open car or something like that. It's just talk about saving you from
sketchy.
yourselves. You need to. Now's not the time for me to be doing that.
Stock, a mostly stock Porsche Turbo S took second overall this past year. So you don't need an open wheel car.
Yeah.
The right day at the right time. Show up with a leased car, you're good to go. Put 100 octane tune in a cage in that bitch, and let's go racing.
Part of me could totally get fired up about, the absolute, pursuing the absolute thing. Like, I'm glad that I drove the GTP cars during the 90s when they were monstrous. And so, but that's what I got hurt driving. And when I came back, I was like, okay, I did that once.
Yeah.
I don't need to do this every year, a little bit like Formula One with guys getting hurt back.
And there's
in
no
that
walls
era.
on Pikes Peak, obviously. And there's a few, but very few.
Very few, yeah.
We're going to have Randy Lanier on the show in a couple weeks.
Are you really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Did you ever race against that
I
dude?
never raced against him, but when I was going to the races with my dad was racing IMSA when he was running. So I observed
all
him.
Powered by drug money?
Yeah, it was Blue Thunder, and it was Apache powerboats. And, well, IMSA at that time was basically almost half old money and half drug money.
That's so funny.
And so Bobby Aiken tells the story of his dad walking him through and saying, "See that guy over there?" He says, "He's a drug dealer and he's going to go to jail." And that guy inherited this. And that guy right there is a drug dealer. And
That's really funny.
He's going to jail.
These are the two ways into racing.
These are the two ways into racing.
Would you like to be born with it, or would you like to be a criminal? Pick one. I'm reading Randy's book right now, which is called Survival of the Fastest. It's coming. AJ Baim helped him with it. It's coming out in August.
Okay.
I'm real excited because he seems like a fucking nut.
Yeah.
Which I mean that in a complimentary way, despite the fact that the dude went to prison for selling crazy quantities of weed.
Yeah, well, it's obviously looking
Seems
back
like he's
on
good with it now, right, Zach?
Is different because when it's a little bit like prohibition.
Yeah.
It's like everyone does it now. It's legal in most places. So his was, crazy. It'd be interesting to hear his story. He was the first guy, I think, prosecuted under RICO because they could never, like the Whittingtons all went to jail, but they could only get him on tax evasion. That was the only thing they could get him on. And so until they started doing the RICO, and the RICO had some teeth, and he was the first guy that got hit with RICO.
Yeah, I think so too. And I think he got a presidential pardon as well.
Yeah, something about it. There's something a little interesting there because he was life no parole.
Yeah,
life no parole for marijuana.
He got
huge
like
amounts.
So many years.
Yes,
it was like 30 years. Consecutive 30-year sentences or whatever. It would have been like 200 years or something.
Yeah, that one was done. His pardon. It was done without much. I don't know. It seems like there might be some sort of maybe.
I think it might have been an example, like one of those, like we can't make it legal and still have all these people in jail for weed kind of thing. I'm not sure.
Yeah,
but I'll have Randy tell about it. I don't want to fuck up the story, but it seemed like he was coming up at the same time. He was a few years before you, right?
Yeah, he was. Yeah, because he won the championship in '80. I want to say '84.
Yeah.
But it was basically an open secret. Everyone knew.
Yeah.
Who, the Pauls and the Laniers and the Whittingtons and so forth. Yeah. So
everyone's like they always got the best stuff.
Yeah.
So we know where the money's coming from.
And the story of people being paid in cash and it was kind of an open secret.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And compared to today, where Gunther Steiner is trying his very hardest to not say the word oligarch on Drive to Survive.
But it doesn't change. Randy Lanier says he was addicted to racing. That was his addiction. And so there's nothing like racing. There really isn't anything like racing. Even Hollywood is intoxicating, but all the people that act, to be an action hero, it looks like that's a cool life, but filming a movie sucks.
Yeah.
It's 3 months of tediousness and the finished
That's
product.
why Tom Cruise has to do all his own stunts to be excited by it.
So racing
I actually want to be that person in real life.
Yes.
I don't want to play it.
Yeah. So it's,
but he talks about it in the book. It's like it wasn't enough to win a championship in this medium speed car. I now need to go quicker, and I very quickly got used to this speed, and now I need to go quicker. And it's just like the scale of money that is involved to go, and that much
money
quicker.
was tiny compared to today. I mean, you go to whether it's go-karts now. There's semi-trailers at go-karts, and the money explosion is.
I went to a race in the South. I was down there, and someone took me, and it was a dirt oval, and it was a kids' race, but it was the kids of NASCAR drivers.
Right.
And it was like Dale Jr.'s daughter, I think, was there. Like it was like the and I guess they used the race haulers to go to this little dirt oval. Yeah. It looked like a NASCAR thing. And they're unloading these tiny little sprint cars. Well,
that's kind of the mix of two different things. You talked about can you equalize the haves and the have-nots in Formula One.
Yeah.
Think about combining racing and that and little league parents.
Yeah.
I mean, that's
At least once they're in the car, you can only scream at the refs so much.
You need to be the Ryan Seacrest of that kind of reality racing.
A little kids racing reality show.
Yes.
Oh, that would be quite interesting.
Yes.
Oh my God, so many angry parents.
Yeah.
The real helicopter parents of Southern Sprint
Some
Racing.
who show up in helicopters to watch their kids race. Yeah. I bet that's a tense paddock because the income variance is quite big.
It'd be good too, because one of the problems with racing is you learn quickly what to say and what not to say. The best reality TV is the first couple seasons before anyone figures that out.
Yeah.
And so getting there where kids don't have a filter and parents, that would be awesome.
They said that about Drive to Survive, that there was a noticeable shift once people realized that they were, that they were cast members and not just
self-editing
racing drivers anymore.
Yeah, I feel like you can tell. But they still do a good job of presenting the races and the culture and the struggles and all that stuff. It's just those interview moments I feel like changed a lot in the last couple of seasons.
Yeah, it's inevitable. That's so.
You've been following much NASCAR this year?
I don't follow it as closely. It's weird how it happened when they switched to the stage racing and the final change into the chase. They kind of lost me. I still care and I still follow the results. I just don't. I guess I don't care nearly as much. And the
cars are a lot more like what you were racing.
I like the cars. But the whole point of the exercise is to find the best and celebrate them. And so now, in their pursuit of the Game 7 moments of having the championship decided in the last, it's too big of a trade-off, and you can have someone that. You can't have someone totally undeserving win it, but it's not always going to be the person that should win. Mm-hmm. And it's the nature of the sport. And I compare it more to like the major. I'm a big event sports watcher. I've just finished watching the Tour de France, and I literally watch these 4-hour telecasts, and I love the way Phil Liggett presents it. And I'm not a cyclist. I don't follow it the rest of the year, but I like the big events and the way it builds. And so the majors in golf are like a season of NASCAR, I think. And sometimes a guy has a 5-shot lead at Augusta and Sunday's a snooze. But you can't have it both ways. You can't have it always come down to the end and have this tension that builds over time.
Yeah.
And so that's what they lost when they went to this system. And I think to me it's their new Coke. And they don't realize it. And so I've talked to a lot of people, and they haven't really thought about it like I have, but they're like, yeah, I'm not into it anymore, and it was in pursuit of new fans and so forth. I get the impulse, like Game 7 moments are awesome, but you had almost every.
Do they have a lot of new? I mean, are they growing their audience as it works?
They are. Well,
are they?
Not to cut you off, but like according to Parker Kligerman, who we're friends with, he pays a lot of attention to the ratings and watching, and he has thought for years that the success of Drive to Survive would just lead to more fans of motorsport in general. And it seems like NASCAR is having an uptick in viewership because they were on the decline for like a decade straight.
Yeah.
And that seems to have turned around.
I believe that. I don't know if it's a powerful effect. But it's always easy, it's complicated because you've got, an old graying fan base and so forth and so on. But if you don't attract new ones and you turn off some of the old ones, that's kind of where they were at. They're going back to some short tracks. They're going, the street race in Chicago. They're trying some things. For the longest time, I think they felt like they knew. And I knew Bill France Jr. And he was the kind of the perfect dictator. Because he actually really did go out and get a bunch of people's opinions. He made it clear who was going to make the decision, but he really did pull. And I was at Phoenix one day, I'm walking by, and he was just sitting in the grandstand. And he said, hey, and he always liked me for some reason. And so I just went and sat with Bill Jr., and he had a sense for what mattered and so forth. So I don't think they would have made that change under him. You get people's time is up. And so whether it was Bernie who grew it and now it outgrew him. So, but I think, I don't think the changes to the format, I think they really took a lot of the meaning out of the pursuit. Now there's this all-in mentality. You win a race and you advance. So the whole early part of the season is all about getting a win.
Yeah.
And so subtle changes that I think add up to a meaningful loss of meaning.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've really been paying more attention to the car than any individual races to see how the car works out. And it seems like they're struggling changing tires. It seems like the one lug nut's really tripping people up.
Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting. And the penalties, needless to say, the worst thing that could happen is one of those tires getting loose, which is why the penalties are what they are. So, I mean, I like NASCAR, and I didn't come on here to sort of bash them. But I think some of those things, and it's a bunch of smart people that care, and so hopefully they're kind of reorienting. I'm not sure if you went back to the old, stage, without the stages, it probably wouldn't have a huge difference. So they have to figure out what is the new recipe for today's people.
Yeah. I think you have to give there's credit, like when they went to super speedways, it probably worked really well for a while, and maybe they just stayed with that method for a little too long as the audience changed and got bored of that, and now they're trying new stuff and new tracks, and they're like gamifying the racing at the same time changing the tracks and more road courses and more street courses, and it's like, well, which one of these variables is having the most effect in the positive and the negative? So maybe they'll get rid of the gamification, but I'm excited that they're adding more road courses in, of course, because we like to watch that stuff, and then the street course thing, that'll be interesting.
The Chicago thing seems interesting. The track map isn't really selling it because it's a bunch of right angles. But in person, it could be totally different. In person, it could be awesome.
Yeah, I haven't seen the.
You haven't seen the track map?
I haven't seen the layout. Yeah,
it's like here. I'll make it for you.
I know. Yeah,
it's that.
Oh wow.
I mean, pretty much.
Okay.
It's pretty, or it's actually that. Where it goes around the perimeter. I've put two coasters next to each other on an offset. Here, Zach has the map.
Oh wow, there it is. Yeah,
see, it's pretty much that.
It's almost no offset. Yeah.
But at the same time, the background will look cool.
Yeah. I'm all for trying things.
Yeah.
And, it's a simple formula that works in literally every area of your life.
Yeah.
Try things small.
Yeah.
Do more of what works, less of what doesn't. Where you get, when you get, try to prove that you're right, don't just yell louder. Like that's a saying in stocks. If the trade's going against you, change your mind. Say I was wrong rather than just
NASCAR should have
louder.
a beach race. Fuck it. Let's go way back.
Yeah.
Straight up Daytona Beach.
Yep.
Let's keep it old school.
Well,
wouldn't it be cool if they put a bunch of NASCAR drivers in cars from the fucking 40s and had a beach race?
Well,
special stage?
I got news for you. The driver behavior; those cars weren't nearly as safe. I mean, obviously, way less safe. But I drove Parnelli Jones's '70 Trans Am Championship car, and he drove my car. This was a while ago.
Oh, I drove one of them. I drove the red, white, and black one.
Yes.
Did you drive an orange one? Or
I drove an orange one.
Okay, but the same thing, more or less. Yeah.
And wow,
it's a handful.
It's a handful. And then Parnelli's actually had this lever where the seat belts you had seat belts, but they went into this Y, and then instead of a strap, it was a little cord that went into this pulley, and you basically, when you leaned back, you would lock it, and then there was a lever that you could unlock the belts so that you could reach forward to get the switches on the dash.
Get
and then
the
I swear to God, you would
release your seat belt lever,
and then you would come back into position and lock it down, and the thing hit under your shoulder blades. I mean, it was just terrifying.
Nobody was like, what we could do?
Yeah,
move these switches to where you could
put extensions on them or whatever. I mean, literally things like that you're so close to it. You're like, oh, this is how we've always done it.
Like Randy's video from Pikes Peak. His in-car, his window fogged up.
Yep.
And he literally had to undo his harnesses to wipe his windows. He's racing up the mountain in blindness, wiping his window with one hand. I mean, and no seatbelts.
Pikes wasn't hairy enough,
Yeah. That 1970 car was a workout, though, wasn't it?
Oh, I mean, I was like, wow. And I got out, and Parnelli said, if I knew they were this easy to drive, I'd still be racing.
What car of yours was he driving?
One of the all-sport cars.
One of the 90s cars?
Yeah.
Were those cars, I mean, were they easy? Before you got in the 1970, did you consider that an easy car to drive?
They were physically they were really hot. They were hotter than his car, but physically they were power steering then compared to the no power steering.
Yeah, that was the biggest shocker to me. I was
yeah.
like, oh shit, they took the power steering out of this thing. And it's got 305 or 315 slicks in the front.
And bump steer and they were so. I mean, they were easy to drive per se, but they were harder to
physically. I mean, imagine doing an endurance race in that car. Your arms would fall off by the end of it. I like the revs though.
Yeah.
Well, that thing, they had some revs, those engines.
Well, that's the other thing is if you drive a modern day version of the old car, the engines are way better now. Like they build them with modern technology. So, I mean, they had like 4-something horsepower, high 4s back in the day.
Yeah, they told me this thing was like 6.
Exactly.
They said it was, I don't know what I don't know what the engine was.
One of the things in vintage racing is everyone builds these cheater motors.
Yeah. Do you think it's good for vintage racing to allow that kind of stuff in it? Because it's a spectator sport. No one's really taking it that seriously, right?
Yeah, it's funny. It's different. I haven't done any in Europe. Europe is a whole different animal. Europe, they're really particular on the specs, and they race them like...
I love that Goodwood Instagram.
The
Goodwood Instagram is a great follow.
Oh, yeah. That whole feed is you can't turn it off. Yeah. It's... you kind of got to do what over here they rich guys want to have a little room to play and they bitch to each other. It's a little bit like real racing. There's always people bitching about it. He's cheating, and they probably are. So
my friend John has his company Persang, and they do vintage pre-war stuff, and so a lot of the folks who race the old Bugattis and Alphas from the 20s to the 40s, they have the original engine on a stand, and then they run one of these Persang engines, which are in theory identical, but not numbers matching. And he said to me, if you look at a lot of these vintage races, like a bunch of these cars on the field are basically replicas, and some of the folks get away with it because they own the real one that looks just like it, and they submit the facts about the real one, and then they show up with this one that visually looks exactly the same.
Takes us back to the diamonds. You keep the real one in the safe, and you go out with a CZ. So in case they steal it at the restaurant, you're like, take it.
Yeah, the wife does have a CZ ring for traveling and stuff. Yeah, we do have that, and I do encourage that. Why not? I wear my fake Rolexes when I do that.
Like the vintage racers, you carry the papers in your purse. So if you're at a dinner and someone says, "Oh, that looks fake," say, "Yeah, but we have the real one too. We have the real one."
Yeah. Zach, does the Patreon have anything to contribute?
Yes.
To the show? Oh, sorry, did I get in the middle of
No, not at all. Let me bring the questions up here.
Are you running the show on your new computer today?
This is the new one. I brought the new one in because I was going to edit.
It took Zach how many months to get a new MacBook Pro?
Ordered it
6
February 2.
Yeah,
and it arrived 4 days ago, whatever it was.
5 months to get a new MacBook Pro.
Supply chain slowdown.
Chain slowdown, and they delivered the first one to the wrong house.
I mean, I didn't want to mention that, but I could have had it in June, but I'm an idiot. So
it's going to be interesting. Apple. That's one of the big speculations on Apple's earnings. I think are Thursday, and people are wondering how much the China being closed and all that is going to affect their numbers.
I mean, I think there's a reason Intel is building a factory in America, or trying to, because they're like, oh, we should bring chips back here, because
in the short term, it means that Zach can export videos faster and therefore go to bed earlier.
So great. 4 times faster. 4 times.
Literally affects your bedtime.
Oh, yeah. Dude, the difference between exporting a video in 1080 and exporting a video in 4K, it's a world of difference. Right. And if you don't have the newest hardware, forget it. Just don't. It's just a nightmare. So yeah, he's had a rough couple months with the 4K exports, and now it's much quicker.
Way better.
Yeah. Let's see. In the Patreon, of course, if you want to ask questions of our guests, if you want an ad-free listening or watching experience, if you want to get the show the day we record it instead of waiting until Tuesday or Thursday, patreon.com/The Smoking Tire Podcast is where you do that. David says, Multiclass Racing always looks so crazy. How do you negotiate your own racing without giving up too much to allow faster cars room to race as well?
It's a good question because there is a real skill to it. There's like when I've raced in both the faster classes and the slower ones, and driving a slower car helps you when you get to the faster ones because there's little things you can do that don't cost you any time. And part of it is communicating. Like these guys that do nothing but flash, it's a little bit like crying wolf. And so now there it doesn't really come back because you can't tell who it is, but like certain people in the daylight, you're like, this person always runs me out of room, so I'm going to not leave them room. So there's some of it is history and how you treat people, but there's also a skill to letting people by without losing time. You know, maybe tap your brake lights, like I know you're coming, go. And because sometimes you don't commit. You're like, does he see me? Does he not? And so there really is a bunch of nuance to it.
And so, it's the responsibility of the faster car to overtake safely, right? It's not. Is it the responsibility of the slower car to get out of the way?
It is, but there's some, there's something to be said for like the sanctioning bodies. IMSA has gotten to where they let them race, but they really tell the fast guys, listen, if you come in and just use up the guys, because you're always going to be on the inside, and the guy on the outside loses. And so if there's an incident, you're going to be held responsible. So,
Lay Surface says, as a racer, do you think that high downforce cars or no downforce cars are more fun to race?
Well, this is an interesting question because it's like in NASCAR, they say more power, less downforce. But the most thrilling car I've ever driven was the super high downforce GTP car. It's a different challenge. So they're both fun. What matters is the racing good. What Formula One rightfully attacked was how can we make it so it doesn't disturb the air so much for the car behind. And
right.
So I like they're both different challenges. There's a thrill to lightweight, high downforce because it's just you really have to talk to yourself like you can't believe the car will do this.
Yeah.
And you in the high speed, high consequence corners, And so, but generally speaking, the lower downforce where you really got to balance it. They're both incredibly hard to get the max out of, basically.
Mm-hmm. We already talked about that one. Chris Navio, thanks for your question. We covered it earlier in the show. Prashan, do you guys think a race series without a standardized drivetrain could work, i.e. chassis, aero, noise, horsepower, tires, etc., bound by rules, but manufacturers can use any engine and transmission they want? Don't we have that in certain series? I mean...
Well, sort of. Things have become standard. The reason things get standardized is because of cost. And you can have unbelievable costs, like in Formula One, as long as you have even more unbelievable value in terms of eyeballs, watching, and reach. And so, but you can't, it's not sustainable if the cars are way more expensive than the value. And so that's why we go to that. I would like to see, there's a guy, Bill Hughes, who used to own Willow Springs, used to have a series where he kind of did it. It wasn't a big series, but he basically said there's two rules. It's got to have four wheels, got to have a body. And he says it doesn't matter, anything else. And so, but I think there was maybe a fuel tank size. And so some people would come out there, and it was production cars, but someone would have 1,000 horsepower and these big wings. Now, if really good teams got out there, you'd settle on what the best package was, right. And that's what everyone would do. And
what they have in modern sports car racing, I mean, you've got production-based cars where you've got a front-engine V8 versus a rear-engine flat six versus a four-cylinder.
Cadillac's a V8.
Yeah.
The Acuras are turbos. So you do have some of that. You have to have some equivalency formula. IMSA in the old days used to have just kind of a displacement to weight graph, and they had a multiplication factor for turbos. And you could choose kind of anywhere on that line where you want. I want to run a lighter package with a smaller displacement. And so, I mean, there is quite a bit of diversity of packages.
Variants
in
exist
sports
now.
car. Yeah.
And if you look at Pikes Peak racing, that shit is as close to run what you brung as you can find anywhere. I mean, it's not wheel to wheel, but
it brings up though BOP, like the GT class, GT3 racing is all kinds of different stuff.
Yeah.
I get why BOP exists, and they've gotten better at doing it so the teams can't cheat it as well. But it's kind of, that and I was talking to someone, the Evo package for one of the cars was a couple $100,000, and the rules makers are going to make sure everyone's competitive. So you upgrade to this better, more expensive car, and then the manufacturer that doesn't have an Evo package, they can't have them not competitive. So they give them a little more power, a little more fuel, whatever. So it's kind of a weird era we're in. I don't know what the answer is, but Pikes Peak, that's I think why the appeal of Pikes Peak. I'd like to see Indy get back to, and they're trying to get the speeds up again. They're limited because you can't get a car up into the
300s.
Well, I don't think there's any reason you couldn't, but because of the cars flying and getting into the crowd. So I had an idea. I went and did a race of champions in Saudi. And the guy that took us over there says, these guys are hot to trot. They want ideas. I said, I got some ideas for you. I said, one of them is you're going to build a replica of Indy, and there's going to be no grandstands on the outside. And you're going to have a race there that'll eventually, they'll be going 300 miles an hour.
That's kind of interesting.
Yeah.
They go, oh, yes. How much? How much? You build it for me.
Yeah. Another one was a road course that actually had either a loop in it.
I'm in. Yeah.
Or
Tanner Faust is like, are you sure?
Here, this one, a section where they go. Everybody talks about these cars can drive stuck to the ceiling.
Downforce
have a straightaway that is inverted.
A corkscrew straightaway. Yeah.
Now, if you don't have your porpoising situation sorted,
yes,
that would be a problem.
There's a couple tunnels that I've seen that are miles and miles long, and I'm just waiting for Red Bull one of these days to be like Red Bull's doing the inverted car thing with all their money.
Yeah.
But
yeah, I thought of Red Bull. They'd be the ones to do it.
It's always the theoretical inverted math problem. Yeah.
Well,
so you want F-Zero. That's for anyone who's over 40. That's a racing game that basically has what Tommy's talking about.
Okay. Yes.
Do you know how long it took me to figure out that F-Zero was like Formula Zero?
Yes.
Like, I don't know why. I didn't figure it out until I was an adult. I played that game so much when I was a kid. I was like, oh, yeah, that makes sense. Tyler M. is looking for a helmet for track days. The new track won't allow you to use your motorcycle helmet. Yeah, that's a real thing. Any specific models you love or have disliked? Can you recommend a helmet?
I'm the wrong guy to ask because I'm not current. I was a Bell guy my whole career. I think it's kind of personal preference. You try them on. Some people like a bigger opening for field of vision. Some like the smaller ones. And also different head shapes. Some helmets fit you better than others,
Yeah, I mean, it depends on your budget. If you don't want to cheap out on a helmet, if you can afford a good one. I occasionally will wear open face helmets in videos, but that's specifically so you can see my facial expressions in videos. I don't recommend doing that for track days. I'd recommend a closed face helmet. Bell makes a great helmet. My racing helmet is by Impact, and they make it's not custom, but it's made to measure. So you have to take a bunch of measurements of your head and send those in, and they make them to that. It's a little more expensive, but it's really comfortable. And a friend of mine crashed at over 100 miles an hour wearing one, smashed his head into the roll cage, just fine. And so I was like, all right, that'll do. I will take that. I've never had one that I didn't like, where I was like, oh, this is a piece of shit. So I don't even know what to avoid. But
yeah, it's. There was an old ad. It was a Bell ad that was, if you have a $10 head, wear a $10 helmet or something like that.
Yeah, that's a good one.
So, I would think you could get on to some of these enthusiast, message boards and so forth, and find people that literally try them all, test them all,
probably
and
grassroots motorsports
have an opinion on where the real value is.
Yeah. I would say don't spend money on a carbon fiber looking helmet that isn't actually made of carbon fiber. It might be even actually heavier than just they'll put that one layer.
I would argue you don't need a carbon helmet if you're, that's more ballistics for open wheel stuff. I would say it's kind of overkill. I mean, you have a very, very good helmet without that paying that extra premium on the closed car stuff.
And buy a white one and support local artists by having a local artist paint it for you. A custom painted helmet is pretty fun.
Yeah.
Ben Halloran, wait a second. This one's random. Nothing to do with Tommy. Right. Sorry. Wants to know, when I'm in the UK, have I thought about trying any of the hot hatches? I'm going to the UK for vacation. I'm not bringing any cameras. The only car I'm driving will be a Land Rover off-roading in the Scottish Highlands. Those do seem like fun cars, but I'm not going to the UK to work, so we're going to have to pass on that one. Last question. James Cowley says, are there... Boil it down from some more words. Are there any electric platforms or series you're interested in as a fan or competitor?
Not. They haven't got my interest.
Got you yet?
No. I watched Formula E the very first few races, and they were just slow.
Yeah.
And then I think they made a mistake. I get why they did it. A mistake when they got more capacity going, and they said we could either make the cars twice as fast and still do a car change halfway through, or because range is such a big deal, it's a marketing decision. Let's have a car that goes the whole race. And so they were not. They could have made them twice as fast, and they didn't. And I think that was so. I'm not anti-electric for racing. I mean, there's some things like with the Pikes Peak car where you can real torque vectoring, where the outside tires just speed up, and you could do some stuff dynamically that no regular car with mechanical diffs and so forth could do. So I like the idea of some of it, but they haven't. They haven't
hit the nail on the head yet. Yeah, me either. It's tough to. I respect how difficult it is and why they want to do this. Hill climbing makes a lot of sense. I mean, the Goodwood shit, that McMurtry thing.
That car was the star of the show.
Were you there?
No.
That video was like, I thought it was in Fast Forward.
Well, everyone sent it around, and I said, imagine how fast that car would be if it had big downforce. I didn't realize. Do you know what that car had on it?
What do you mean?
They were running
a sucker fan.
A sucker, yes.
Yeah.
I'm like,
it made 2,000 pounds of downforce
at the starting line.
At zero.
I'm like, once I saw that, I'm like, that's why it looked so fast.
And did you hear it? The startup sound was crazy.
I didn't hear the startup sound.
It sounded like a Boeing.
Now there is a good example. Now I don't know why you couldn't do that with a mechanical car. It's easier to do with an electric.
Yeah, you could.
But Jim Hall did it. With the sucker.
But for a hill climb, awesome. If you only need up 2 miles of battery power, it doesn't need to weigh that much. For that kind of a short range, it might even weigh less than an internal combustion engine.
Yeah. I was wondering because Top Fuel dragsters,
definitely.
I was like, from the starting line, is there a rule prohibiting suction?
Oh, I don't know about suction. Maybe for funny car?
Yeah.
Oh, that could be very interesting. I don't know if it matters as much because they're not handling, and I don't know, but how it affects just that straight line performance.
Well, I know downforce is a big deal for them, and because they can't have the clutch has to hook up in stages because it can't take all the power.
Yeah.
So if you could get more suck off a line,
zero.
it should.
Yeah.
What is can you just Google real quick world record EV dragster? Like what is the fastest EV quarter mile? I don't even know.
Talk about a quantum leap, because everyone had the opportunity to think about that before, and then someone finally said, let's do suction.
Oh, this is March 22nd, 202. It's called Faster Than Cancer. I guess that's got to be a charity thing, right?
Of course.
Yeah, of course. 202 miles an hour in the quarter mile. Okay, so that's the fastest right now.
Yeah.
That's as of May 2020. Don Garlitz drove it? Get the fuck out of here. Oh, look at that.
We're in a 7.235.
All right, so they're getting there. That's quick.
Yeah. Well, now the challenge you have though with the power of a nitro car, they make
6,000, 7,000 horsepower. Might even be more.
Over 10 now.
Is it 10? They don't even have dynos anymore. It's just like So they need to get there. But 7 seconds that's pretty good. That's something. That's an exciting number at a drag race.
I mean the performance attributes of EV. It's an exciting time. It's different, and I like the innovation where everyone can kind of skin the cat differently.
Yeah. Hill climb is where it really does. You're not affected by altitude, torque vectoring. I mean that's exciting.
The energy, the hybrid cars like KERS in Formula One and hybrid LMP1 cars. I mean that every single vehicle on the road should have brake regen.
Yeah.
Every time I see a huge heavy like a trash truck or a bus, every time you stand on the brakes, you're converting some of this fossil fuel or electric energy into heat, and it's gone.
Yeah.
And so, like, if it could be captured and get it going again, I mean, talk about huge, just overall gains to the system.
I'm working on a column for Road and Track that I don't want to necessarily scoop myself on, but it's basically about the ways that the major OEMs failed by using the term hybrid in a way that is like, whereas as opposed to, it's sort of the opposite of what Tesla did to make electric cars cool and what they could do to fix it. I have an idea, and you'll read about it in Road and Track. I don't want to scoop myself now, but I have an argument.
I can see where you're going.
Yeah, yeah. The second we hit unspeed on this, I'll tell you exactly what it's. Thanks for coming down, Tommy.
You
it's
bet.
always good to
It's
hang
fun.
out. I'll see you in a couple weeks at Pebble.
Yes, you will.
See you at the Quail.
You're going to be making a beach landing, right?
Oh, dude. I'm driving my 328. Ferrari 328 status.
the one
the one that's in a million pieces right now. But we're now building. They're putting it back together. Donnie's putting it back together. He spent months taking it apart.
It was funny because, when talking about the Ferrari and the Countach and all that stuff, yachts, there's a rule that you shouldn't spend more than 10% of your net worth on a yacht, and it's 10% of the purchase price per year in maintenance. You should come up with what that is.
Well, I fortunately didn't spend more than 10% of my net worth on the car.
Right.
I have spent more than 10% of the purchase price on the car in maintenance. However, I hypothesize that I will not need that I will be able to amortize this over several years.
Okay.
Once I get this car back, it shouldn't need anything for a while. Everything's new. There's nothing left. Everything is new.
Okay. When
That
they
is true.
when they were new, how long would they run without needing heavy maintenance? That's
I don't know. I
not-
was a little kid. I have no idea. Probably a
Great
while.
question.
yes.
It probably ran great from 86 to about 94 or 95 without a whole lot.
I mean, that's
of
their
issues.
reputation. Italian sports cars.
Italian sports
known for
cars.
being
They don't need anything.
the Camry of Europe.
Did you see on the Instagram? I have Ferrari brand gear oil that we have to use. It's like this special.
They run like a Swiss watch.
Fucking ridiculous.
Yeah, it's extra virgin.
I have been told repeatedly that cars like the 328 and the Countach and a lot of stuff from the 80s and 90s got so cheap that the people didn't want to, the 328 was worth $30,000.
Mm-hmm.
Was it worth doing a $10,000 or $12,000 service on it? So they found ways to cut corners and do cheap garbage, cheap parts. People worked on them, didn't really know what they were doing, and now we got to unfuck all that. Mm-hmm. And once you do, they're good.
I think I don't want to, you know what?
What? You're here.
I was just going to say it's part of the fun, but I suspect it won't quite pan out the same way because I mean they were 80s cars then. So and also the people that work on them to restore a $2 million 300 SL.
Yeah.
Now costs, I don't know what it is, but the cost to work on all these things, if you want a countertop in a $5 million house, it's commensurate with the $5 million house. If you want a similar material countertop in a $500,000 house.
Sure.
So
Yeah, no, you have a point, but most of the parts are not that expensive. It's just that things in my car have cascaded. The circuit board fucking melted. Why did the circuit board melt? Because the last owner got lazy about changing out the fuel filter at the interval he was supposed to. Fuel filter got clogged. Fuel pump had to work harder. Overloaded the circuit for the fuel pump with current, which then melted the rest of the circuit board. So if you do the shit you're supposed to do, it doesn't cascade into other shit, in theory.
you know what? Rationalizations are awesome.
Also, I can rationalize it.
Yes.
Whatever. Also, I want to drive a 328 GTS to Pebble Beach.
That's
so
all you need to say. That's
all
what I
kind
said.
of cash
you don't need
so
to,
I can do it.
Yes. And God bless you for it. God bless you for it.
That's our show. Thanks, everybody. We'll see you next time.